And it's time for Lefties Losing It. And we really need to check in on the ladies of The View. It's been too long and I've missed the weapon-grade hate and bile masquerading as tolerance and considered analysis. Here is Sunny Hostin before the Super Bowl claiming that if you don't love Bad Bunny and if perhaps you think there may be some better options for the Super Bowl halftime show, well, you're racist.
And so Bad Bunny, while he speaks Spanish, as Anna does, as I do, we're all Americans. It is so very racist what is happening in this country about Bad Bunny. Let's just call a thing a thing. Let's call a thing a thing. It's just racism.
And after the rather underwhelming performance that the bulk of the audience did not even understand and arguably did not enjoy, we had Sunny Hostin with this hot take about Bad Bunny.
Understand or speak Spanish to feel the joy and to feel the unity and the message of inclusivity.
Staying with The View, and they really do have a talent for finding guests that are even crazier than the host. And this next dude fits the bill, Kentucky Democrat Governor Andrew Schultz, who claims it is his Christian faith that makes him promote kids having access to trans treatments.
We rarely talk about the why. People want to know what drives us, especially in a world with social media where everyone's looking for the next authentic thing. For me, that's my faith. Most of the decisions I make are based on that golden rule that says we love our neighbor as ourselves, and that parable of the Good Samaritan that says everyone is our neighbor. And so when I've taken actions like vetoing the nastiest piece of anti-LGBTQ legislation that ever came through my state, I described it in those terms. I said my faith teaches me that all children are children of God. And I didn't want people picking on those kids.
Sweet baby Jesus. They are not picking on these kids, you absolute muppet. They are protecting them. Read the research, Andy. You are complicit in inflicting irreversible harm on confused kids, and using your faith as an excuse is frankly a little sick. Now, to be clear, the nastiest piece of anti-LGBTQ legislation, as Governor Beshear calls it, this is what it does. It bans so-called gender-affirming care for minors. That's irreversible treatments, including surgeries. Keeps boys out of girls' restrooms and requires schools to tell parents if their child is experiencing gender dysphoria. That's what he calls the nastiest piece of anti-LGBTQ legislation. Now, the left, including members of The View, are very alarmed at the hundreds of jobs being slashed at the Washington Post, which is a propaganda outlet these days for the Democrats. Yes, the left are very agitated, but it wasn't long ago when the ladies of The View were urging Washington Post readers to cancel their subscriptions.
So far, 200,000 people have canceled their Washington Post subscription over the decision to block the editorial board from endorsing Vice President Harris.
It sends a message to Jeff Bezos, and I will say, in this election, we're normalizing a bigoted, fascist racist. These opinions matter even more.
Go ahead.
It matters more.
Oh, what short memories they have. Of course, the editorial board not endorsing Kamala Harris meant nothing because everything that pumped out is biased anti-Trump and anti-Republican. Now, this lefty losing it is genuinely disappointing because Andrew Schultz is funny and clever, well, mostly clever. Alas, he fell for all the misinfo and BS pushed by the activist class. He might as well dye his hair green and add pronouns to his bio. He has lost the plot.
But I will say that this was a breaking point for me in the way that the administration responded to it. Like, I didn't think what's happening right now with ICE could happen in America. I genuinely did not think that was possible. I thought our institution, I thought the Constitution would hold up. When I see it and then immediately defend it, I start to go, we gotta be very loud about this. Like, it all of a sudden becomes not like liberal catastrophic thinking. It starts to become very reasonable, nuanced criticism of the administration. They have just made the most far left critiques of the Trump administration. Their reaction to this has just justified all of them.
No, they have not, Andrew. Dear me. He has obviously given in to all the bullying from the Karens online. But we still have funny comics who have not been bullied by the Karen Brigade, and they're not soy boys, and Steve Byrne is among them. Here he mocks the ill-informed wokery that we are seeing at the Winter Olympics.
I would love to enjoy the Winter Olympics from Milan, but I can't, knowing that in 222 BC, the Romans stole that land from the Celtics.
Every now and then, the hard-left media surprise you by putting to air something that is actually insightful, rational and balanced. I guess even a broken clock is right twice a day, and MSNBC were right when they featured journalist Anand Giridharadas, who had this to say about the latest revelations in the Epstein files.
Sets of emails. This is from Catherine Rumler, who worked as Barack Obama's White House counsel, Democratic administration, White House counsel, lawyer representing the American presidency. Now, in the way that is normal in American life, she's the chief lawyer for Goldman Sachs.
Yeah. Wow.
And they're trading advice. She's getting his advice on, should I become attorney general? She's taking the advice of a convicted sex offender on should I accept Barack Obama's potential offer to be attorney general. And he's telling her, she's giving him advice about his situations in life. And in this very striking scene, she describes driving up to New York, and she says, I will stop at a rest stop at some point in New Jersey on my way up to New York, and I will see, no doubt, all these people who are 100 pounds overweight, and I will be shocked by it, and I will be moved to never eat another morsel of food in my life so that I never become like them. I just want to say to people watching this is what people in that class think about you. You don't normally get a glimpse. You see them on TV. You see them on their curated social media that someone else is doing for them. These emails are a glimpse of how people in this Epstein class feel about you. They feel you're a slob at a rest stop that they unfortunately have to stop at to get gas.
Let's bring in Sky News contributor Kosha Gator. Kosha, that was precisely my takeaway from reading some of these emails. The utter disdain these people have for ordinary Americans, for ordinary people outside their elite circles.
Yes, as you say, Rita, even a broken clock is twice right, or right twice a day. It felt like a through the looking glass moment for me, because what he was saying is what you and I and other people talk about, certainly on the right side of politics, all the time, every day, every week. And it was just really bizarre to hear them say that. I thought Mika Brzezinski's face was a little bit funny, like there was cognitive dissonance going on in her head, and she couldn't quite work out. Should she debate him? Should she accept it? And I also think it was funny because he, Anand, the contributor over there, is part of that same elite class that looks down on most of the rest of us. But it was interesting that he was excluding himself from it and creating this new category called the Epstein class. You could say that that's a super, super elite within the elite. And it was interesting in that it was bipartisan, sort of. He's sort of lumping them together, bipartisan folks whose names are showing up in the Epstein files. So maybe the edifice is cracking a little bit, and we're getting out of this left versus right thing, because there are offenders from both sides, certainly in those vast emails that are still being analyzed.
I would argue plenty of the MSNBC hosts are also in that class. They may not be in any way connected to Jeffrey Epstein, but they also have disdain for their fellow countrymen and look down upon them as the great unwashed that they have to coexist with. Now, more on those emails in the Epstein files, which have also lifted the lid on Ghislaine Maxwell's strong ties to the Clinton Global Initiative, one of Bill Clinton's post-presidential projects. Kosha, Ghislaine Maxwell reportedly played a major role in funding and establishing the Clintons' charity.
Yes, this gets from bad to worse. We know that Bill Clinton has been named in the files and seen and photographically in the emails along the way for all the salacious stuff with the girls and the women and allegedly, those things in that category. But now there's the other side of it, soft corruption, we call it, because all of these things, the Clinton Global Initiative and other ways in which these folks make money, it may not be illegal on the surface, but you really do know that there are quid pro quo type deals going on in there. People have long reported on that in relation to the Clinton Global Initiative. And this just adds another layer to that of all the people, Ghislaine Maxwell was an instrumental player in setting that up and procuring those donations and funds for them. So I think in the court of public opinion, it's going to be pretty hard for the Clintons to come back. They're kind of out of the main stage of politics anyway, but this is certainly not helping them.
Now to another leftist media personality shocked by the names featured in the latest Epstein document dump. Here is Bill Maher, and he had this to say about some of the high-profile individuals and the emails they sent the convicted pedophile.
Genghis Khan, I'm sure, did his raping and pillaging, but he wasn't a phony about it. He didn't pretend he was a good guy, I would imagine.
No.
Some of the people, Noam Chomsky, that was like the deal breaker for me. Noam Chomsky, Deepak Chopra did you find me a cute Israeli? He says, this is in an email. And then they go on about it and just joke about it. You know, how can you listen to this guy as a guru after this? I'm sorry, I'm not trying to pick on him. I know him. He seems like a nice guy. But obviously there's this other side to this Peter Attia guy who I saw him on 60 Minutes recently, this great guru of health. And he's saying some of the...
Oh, man.
What?
Some of his stuff was like...
I go into Jeffrey Epstein withdrawal when I don't see him, he says. The problem with becoming friends with you, he says to Epstein, the life you lead is so outrageous, and yet I can't tell a soul.
That's terrible. It is an eye-opener, I've got to say. Noam Chomsky, I wasn't as shocked to see Noam trying to advise Jeffrey Epstein about how he can fix his public image. But some of these high-profile names and the communication they had with this man, even after he was convicted of these hideous offences. We talked about Fergie and the former Prince Andrew yesterday. Kosher, there are so many who should know better and I think whose reputations are going to be tarnished by this association with Epstein.
Yes, if you've got MSNBC, Mika Brzezinski, and Bill Maher now all jumping on this bandwagon of genuinely being surprised, the cynic in me tends to think maybe they're not really that surprised, but they have to pretend that they're surprised. Not that they knew about specific individuals, but, you know, just broadly what happens when people are very powerful. And certainly everybody knew the situation or the reality with Jeffrey Epstein after he was convicted, and they were very happy to continue rubbing shoulders with him. That piece was sort of an open secret, just like Harvey Weinstein in Hollywood was an open secret. They look the other way until it is impossible to ignore. And maybe, again, that edifice is cracking a little bit, where you even see prominent people on the left calling attention to this further. And I think the big long and short outcome of it is trust in institutions, trust in power structures and powerful people is at such a low in our culture and in our society right now. And this is just only going to further corroborate that in people's minds, that we're being basically ruled and run by a bunch of folks that think they can do whatever and consequences don't apply to them. And maybe the reality is so far they haven't.
Now, we have another member of the squad whose financial windfall is under the spotlight. Kosher, Democrat Ayanna Pressley is facing some tough questions.
Where did you make all this income? From the rental property?
Sir, I submit a financial disclosure, just like everybody else. There's nothing to see here. Thank you.
Is it appropriate for members to make so much money when they're in office? Should there be rules there? Financial disclosure reports show that the wealth of Pressley and her husband Conan Harris swelled from $12,000 in 2019 to as much as $8 million. 5 rental properties earn them up to $350,000 annually. Pressley once advocated to suspend rent during the pandemic. She pushed policies for struggling homeowners.
These little to no cost bills help people remain housed.
Pressley's husband is an ex-con who went from serving a decade in jail before they were married for drug trafficking to raking in up to $1 million a year as a business and management consultant.
There are many times where we can see that the spouse is the person who may be bringing in the most income.
Some lawmakers resist restrictions on outside earnings. Do you think that there should be changes, some different rules about what members can make while they're in office?
These are presumably right-wing reports designed to try to undermine our members.
Kosher, what more can you tell me about this issue? It extends beyond Pressley. The spotlight recently has been on Nancy Pelosi and Ilhan Omar as well.
This is a long-standing issue. The zip code of the neighborhoods around D.C. is the richest zip code in America, and it is a zip code that has no businesses, nothing is created, nothing is made. It's just these folks doing these kinds of investments. She's right over there, Congresswoman Pressley, that they do have to make financial disclosures. And so from that, we can see that her net worth when she entered Congress was $12,000, and now it's around $6 million. Ilhan Omar, you mentioned, had a negative net worth, which she attributes to having student loan debt when she entered Congress, and now she and her husband together to the tune of $8 million. Nancy Pelosi, the most famous example of all, she and her husband had a net worth of $600,000 to $700,000 when they entered Congress, and today they're north of $100 million. It all comes from sort of like what we touched on with the Clinton initiative, not illegal on the face illegal activity. It's just investments that they do. But really what's underneath the investment is that they're trading influence. This is what everybody understands it to be. They're trading influence for affluence. And that means that whether they're investing in wineries or startups or VC funds or real estate or stocks, it's usually a combination of those things. They just make these outsized returns, which suggests that people are paying or into their companies or hiring them for consultancies or board seats or what have you, not because they have expertise or merit in that particular domain, but because they have power or they're proximate to power. Hunter Biden is another one I should throw into that, getting $80,000 a month for a board seat at a Ukrainian energy company. So it's those sorts of deals happen. And as the overall cost of living goes up and wages are stagnant for the everyday American, it just further breeds that discontent with those who are ruling over us and legislating over us.
I wonder if Hunter Biden is still getting those sorts of offers, earning $80,000 per month to sit on a board in an industry he knew nothing about, or getting, what was it, $500,000 a painting for his little
Hunter the artist
amateur hour squiggles. That, yeah, but I wonder if those paintings are still selling like they were when his father was in the White House. I mean, really, they're not even subtle about it. Now, before you go, we discussed earlier in the week the good news that it seems like Kamala Harris is back. She wants to be president. She's relaunching her website and Kamala headquarters. Let's see how she explains here why voter ID laws could make it impossible for minorities to vote. Just try to follow the reasoning here.
Is agreeing to voter ID one of those compromises that you'd support?
I don't think that we should underestimate what that could mean. Because in some people's mind, that means, well, you're going to have to Xerox or photocopy your ID to send it in to prove you are who you are. Well, there are a whole lot of people, especially people who live in rural communities, who don't, there's no Kinko's, there's no Office Max near them. People have to understand that when we're talking about voter ID laws, be clear about who you have in mind and what would be required of them to prove who they are. Of course, people have to prove who they are, but not in a way that makes it almost impossible for them to prove who they are.
Oh, kosher. I've missed her word salads. Well, we played some CNN analysis last week showing that the overwhelming majority of Americans, around 85%, want voter ID laws, and yet the Democrats are resisting it and using any excuse, no matter how ridiculous, to justify why voter ID is going to be a setback for democracy.
What she was attempting to explain there with that circular logic has been the long-running argument that people opposed to this policy make, that somehow it's impossible or it's difficult or it's prejudicial to require people from rural communities to go and get ID, which is such a pejorative thing to say, that you're basically saying they're incapable of doing something simple as getting ID. But they say that, and as a result of that, many people believe that it's only for one reason: you don't want ID. Why? Because you want to contaminate the election with people when you have a country with tens of millions of illegals, some of them sneaking through and voting, right? Which is what it's about. And the Democrats have always been openly against it. Republicans have been quite feckless, where they just haven't been able to push it through, and we're getting closer to seeing them do that under the current administration's support. So let's hope that they do, because this is a very fundamental thing for democracy, which they love to talk about, and it's outrageous when 80% of the country supports it that they can't get it done.
Exactly. You've got an 80-20 issue and you've got the 20% setting the agenda. It is madness. Kosher Gator, thank you so much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Now, Bad Bunny's controversial halftime Super Bowl show has been ranked as the 6th best by the New York Times, coming in behind Prince at #1, U2 and Michael Jackson. Absurd if you ask me. But Bad Bunny was ranked ahead of the likes of Beyonce, Madonna and Bruce Springsteen. But the fans in the stadium seem rather underwhelmed. Well, this next gal was into it, but she was dancing alone. I know the feeling, girl.
No one is dancing, not one person. Everyone's like dancing. Hello? Help! Send help!
And we found another girl dancing. She was loving the halftime show, but she was dancing along to the Turning Point USA halftime show on her phone. Let's leave the final word on Bad Bunny to this grandma who was not feeling the vibe, not at all.
Like, who is this man? Golly! He can't sing. I mean, like, what is this? Golly! This is ridiculous. And got the American flag and all these other flags. And yeah, God bless you too. Get off the stage. Please get off the stage.
Now let's have a look at what all the fuss was about.
Ey, muchas novias, hoy tengo una, mañana otra, pero no hay boda. Titi me preguntó si tengo muchas novias. Ey, muchas novias, hoy tengo a una, mañana otra. Ey, me la voy a llevar a todas.
Joining me now is comedian Alex Stein. Alex, what's your verdict on the halftime show? Are you with the grandma? Are you with the girl who was dancing and upset nobody else was dancing?
Well, I was watching Turning Point USA, dominate with Kid Rock, but I'll have to admit that I did go and watch it after the fact, and I think my least favorite part were the two guys gyrating together next to the pickup truck. I don't understand why that was necessary. And on top of that, in the fake bodega that they used for the set decoration, they put "We accept EBT." It's like, I mean, give me a break. If this is not the biggest virtue signal fest I've ever seen in my life, I mean, literally, it was the worst halftime Super Bowl show I've ever seen, and it didn't appeal to anybody. And they're going to make the argument, oh, they're trying to appeal to new fans. Well, why not try to make the current fans happy? And that's the problem with all these big corporations. They don't care about the people that support them the most.
Most NFL fans probably don't know too many of Bad Bunny's songs, even if he was singing in English. Now, the Washington Post is being comprehensively mocked for this hot take on the performance. They claimed that Bad Bunny's Super Bowl halftime show had the kind of wholesome, traditional family values that would fit right in with some of the more sentimental commercials that appeared during the game. Now, really, Washington Post, is this what you see as wholesome and traditional family values type entertainment, Alex? They have a fairly different view of wholesome than most of us.
I mean, I think that's an understatement. I mean, these people are basically so pro-LGBTQ and anti-America that, yeah, they probably did think a bunch of illegal immigrants, freak dancing at the halftime Super Bowl show was wholesome. But if you even look at the words, Titi me pregunto what it means, it's basically a song about treating women like they're disposable and just having multiple girlfriends and being a total degenerate. So there's nothing wholesome about it. I mean, I guess they were dancing slowly, but other than that, I really didn't get any wholesome family values whatsoever from this performance.
No, and I was going to go through some of those lyrics. Obviously, the lyrics were sung in Spanish, but the translations are really not fit for a family program, so we can't even tell you the lyrics. I have no problem with risque lyrics, but Washington Post describing it as wholesome is just a little bit rich. Now, Bad Bunny surprises more than 50 million followers on Instagram by deleting every single one of his posts hours after his controversial performance. Why do you think that is, Alex? Why would he delete essentially his profile?
Well, I noticed that today. I was just covering it, and then I looked at his account, and all the pictures were gone. I don't know if he really cares about negative backlash or if he's just embarrassed by the performance, because when you compare it to other great performances like Prince, like Michael Jackson, it really stunk at the end of the day. And so maybe he just doesn't want the heat from all the people that are, criticizing that. But at the same time, maybe it's a publicity stunt, so that you and I are talking about, why did this guy have one of the, most talked about halftime performances ever, and then he just kind of ghosts everybody. So I don't know. I don't know what his marketing team is thinking by doing that whatsoever.
Well, there has been a lot of criticism on social media of the performance, but I've got to say the bulk of the mainstream media has been absolutely glowing in their assessment of his performance. Now, Turning Point USA had some incredible numbers watching their alternative halftime show, and those numbers continue to rise. What's remarkable, Alex, is people were streaming this not just on YouTube, but on Rumble. This is really impacting YouTube's perceived monopoly on that market.
Oh, of course. And, what's really funny, though, about Turning Point is some of the criticisms they're facing, after the fact, which I think are really unnecessary and unwarranted, is people don't like that Charlie Kirk, the difference between him and other conservatives, he wanted to make being a conservative cool. He loved the fireworks. He loved, going against the counterculture. He was the counterculture. And in the counterculture, I feel like Turning Point won this, because even though there's 120 million people watching the Super Bowl, the fact that 10 million people also turned into Turning Point USA, that's a huge victory. And it wasn't necessarily just for Kid Rock. It was because people want to actually watch something that they can, I guess, relate to. And most of the fans can't relate to
Well,
Bad
by
Bunny.
the end of the week, yeah, exactly. Well, by the end of the week, we'll bring you the totals there, because those Turning Point USA numbers are continuing to go up, so we can make a better comparison at the end of the week. Alex Stein, thank you so much for your time.